There's a lot of history here with the Lebanon Fire Department. And if you look around the room real quick, you can kind of see just some of the kind of memorabilia. That's really what our history is all about. We kind of go back, and in some of the display cases here, you can see some of the old style, some of the stuff we still use today, like the bottom ticker tape that you see is all part of the master box system, and those are those red boxes that you see around the city that you can pull should you have a fire or see a fire or something like that. So lots of history in the corners. You can see the pictures that we have from the Great Fire in 1964 on June 19th, where pretty much really has sculpted what you see today here around the park. And I guess we're continuing to sculpt it out a little bit with the new roundabouts and things that are coming. So we'll see how that works for everybody. So tonight what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a little bit of history about the Lebanon Fire Department, go through that, talk a little bit about our call volume, our staffing, really what we do here for technical rescue, different types of calls that we go on, maybe give you a better understanding of how many calls we do and compare those to some of the surrounding areas that we actually call upon for what we would call our auto aid. And then we can take a quick break and then go into our fire extinguisher demonstration. So I will kind of teach you about fire extinguishers. I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions at the end that I can answer for you. And then we're going to do two things. One, we'll break you up into two groups, and we'll have you go, we're going to show you how to do a mega code. This mannequin here is $14,000. It does everything that you can imagine. Its pupils have pupil response. We can start IVs, blood pressures, do crikes. We can do chest decompressions, defibrillate it. It talks to you. It does a lot of different things. And this is a big part of our stuff is about training and making sure that everybody has continuity and that our training is at 100% all the time. And, you know, I mean, it costs money to be able to do that. And having something like this, rather than having to go to DHMC and do that stuff, is huge. It's a huge benefit. Okay. And then the other half will go down back and we'll do live fire training. And you'll actually put some fires out with the extinguishers. If you want to, there's no pressure here. So if you want to do it, we'll have, you know, firefighters go in with you and we'll keep you safe. And then you can do some extinguishers, and we have a prop for that. So, yeah. And then we'll bring you in and let you kind of look around on the apparatus floor to see you, so you can see some of the equipment that we have here in the city. And I'll briefly touch on some of that during my presentation. All right? And please feel free to ask questions as we go. I don't mind being interrupted. I would rather stop then and answer your questions. Okay? Again, my name is Jeff Libby. I'm the Assistant Fire Chief. I did not start my career here in the city of Lebanon. I actually started my career over in Hartford, Vermont. I did 23 years there. Swam the river to the better side, I guess you could say, where I've been here now for about 13 years as the Assistant Chief. I started all of the technical rescue programs in Hartford. And really with the help of some really important people here in this organization, we actually brought those technical rescue skills here to the city of Lebanon, and I'll go over those. If you don't know and can't hear it in my voice, I am super duper proud of this organization. We're proud of the staff that we have. We're proud of the equipment that we have. We maintain it very, very well. We love working for this city and the citizens within it. I will share with you that we also go out to surrounding communities and provide ambulance contractual ambulance service for them. But this group that we have here is super duper dedicated. I almost to the point where they almost burn themselves out, because it doesn't matter how many calls we have, they're going to figure out a way to respond on that call. We call in very limited mutual aid into that city. What I mean by that is calling in Hanover or Hartford to come in to pick you up. When you usually call, if somebody calls here within the city of Lebanon, you are going to get a City of Lebanon employee. So we take pride on that. Welcome. So this is what the department used to look like, and if you look at the front of the building today, it's kind of had a little bit of a shaping problem. We were losing a lot of energy, a lot of heat. If you look at the back windows today, they've been really condensed and decreased a little bit. The nostalgia for us is we would love to get it back to looking like this, but I'm not so sure that will ever happen in my career. As you can see, the apparatus, obviously, when you get downstairs and look at it today, totally, totally different, and also totally more expensive. When you start looking at a ladder truck downstairs, if we were to replace it today, you're looking at about $1.2 million to replace that ladder truck. The nice thing about the City of Lebanon is we have a very good capital improvement program where we bring these things out over 25 years. So we're getting 25, 30 years out of a piece of apparatus. It's not something where it's like a lease program where we're trading it in every 3 years. So we get a lot of use out of it, and we do have a good a system for making sure. Now, ambulances are a little different. Ambulances, because they're on the road all the time, they're racking up a lot of mileage. Those get replaced every 5 years, but everything else, for the most part, is getting placed anywhere between 20 and 25 years. So we'll talk about a little bit about the history, the department, the resources, and the equipment observations. I'll show you some of those things. And if you have some questions, please feel free to ask. Sorry about the font, but I just wanted to get everything on here. We have 4 stations. Does everybody know where those 4 stations are? Most of you probably all know that there's 2 stations. We have one on the west side and then your central station here. We actually do have a non-manned station out towards Enfield, right on Route 4. You can see it out there. It houses our fire alarm bucket truck and a number of our Upper Valley public health trailers and our mass casualty incident trailer, along with a hazardous materials trailer. And you'll see those out in that area for us. Certainly creates a big problem. They were being housed at one of the city-owned properties across the way, which we called our Station 5 because it was easy for us to get over there, hook stuff up. We just have run out of space. A lot of you think it's just about EMS and firefighting. It's not. We wear many hats. So we wear things like ropes rescue, swift water rescue, trench rescue, confined space, hazardous materials. All of those disciplines are placed upon the fire department to deal with, along with doing the emergency management and Upper Valley Public Health. So if there's a pandemic flu or when the Ebola hit, we had to be prepared for all of that stuff. So again, that gets placed onto us. So we wear a lot of hats. So the other station is up at the airport. We actually have an aircraft fire rescue truck up there on site. When we were doing what we call Index A, what that means is if there's a certain size aircraft that's coming in, we used to have to go up there and man that truck for when those planes used to come in. And we were doing that several times a day. So everybody here in the organization is trained at what we call ARF, Aircraft Rescue and Firefighting. We all have to be trained in that to go up and man that truck. That airport does roughly about 150 what we would call general aviation type things per day, so landings and takeoffs, and some days it's even more than that. And when I say general aviation, it's a lot of public stuff that's coming into the airport rather than commercial. We still have Cape Air flying in and out of there several times a day, but that is all of our domain here at the City of Lebanon in the fire department. We have 32 personnel. We have the chief, and if you haven't heard, not only is he the chief of the department, but he is now also the interim direct manager of the airport as well. So he's wearing 2 hats. The nice thing about that is he has a really good assistant chief that's able to manage the fire department for him so that he can leverage and do the things he needs to do up the airport and make sure that that's running appropriately. But I can't take all the credit because I have wonderful staff here, captains that assist me and kind of take a lot off my plate. So I have to put that in for them. So it's a kudos. And then actually we have the 1 assistant chief. Now a little bit of history behind that. There used to be 2 deputies here. So there used to be a deputy that was in fire prevention and then a deputy of just operations. I wish I had that today. It would make things so much more manageable. So my job right now, I actually oversee the floor, fleet maintenance, training, fire prevention, and anything else that may come my way, citizens academies, you know, those sort of things. So with that being said, my plate is very full, and then I have to be the Deputy Emergency Management Director and deal with the public health side of things as well. So we have 4 shifts of 6, okay? So now we don't always have 6 on duty because of vacations or sick time or things like that. So some days we drop down to 5. And I want you to keep that number in mind when I show you the staggering call volume that we have, that we're doing with 5 people on a daily basis compared to somebody like Keene that has 14 to 15 people on duty doing about 400 calls more than we are. Okay, so population-wise. Now, the nighttime population here in the city is roughly around 12,500 or so. However, during the day, it's staggering. It increases to about 45,000 people. Unfortunately, a lot of that weight is placed on our residents' shoulders for that tax stuff. We completely get that. Unfortunately, there's no big wall up, maybe someday, big wall between that Connecticut River that stops people from coming over here. So we have the plazas and the restaurants and all of those things where people are coming into this city and spending, you know, a lot of their money. And unfortunately, accidents and things happen that we're going to have to respond to. And that's why our call volume is so much higher.
Does that include West Lebanon too?
It does, yep. So, great question. Great question. So here, you're going to have 4 people in this station and 2 on the west side. And the biggest reason for that is really due to we want to make sure that our response times are as low as possible, especially on the Route 10 side of things with Quail Hollow and Sachem Village and places like that. Not just for our elderly population, but the other part is we have something that's called the insurance service organization that comes in and talks about a lot of the insurance stuff that hopefully keeps your premiums down. We try to maintain that. So that means that's why we have a ladder truck over here and we have a Quint on the west side. Now Quint is got a ladder on it and water and things like that. But that's all part of that ISO rating. So we try to make sure that we're staggering those trucks appropriately so that we're meeting the proper ISO. So again, we have 4 shifts of 6. Now, you'll see it in a couple of slides here in a few minutes, but we were really, really fortunate. The City of Lebanon applied for what we call a Fire Act grant. It's the Safer Act grant, and we were awarded that in 2017. we were able to hire 3 firefighters. And what that Fire Act grant does is they actually, the federal government pays for, on a prorated cost for those firefighters. So the first year, they pay almost 90% for those 3 firefighters. And then the next year, it's again like 60%. And then the third year, it's 30%. And then after that third year, it's up to the city whether or not they want to keep those 3 firefighters on the staff. Some places decide not to do that. We are very fortunate because we have, I don't want to say that the firefighters are all middle-aged, but we had some retirements that came up. So through attrition, we were able to keep those people and place them into a full-time staff. So hopefully by the time that SAFER grant runs out, we're not going to have to worry about having to lay off or get rid of those firefighters. So now if you look below that, we actually, when we hired one of those 3 firefighters, they were hired to be a daytime position. When we start looking at our statistics, we found that between 6 and 6 are our high times. So we wanted to put a daytime firefighter on. So that individual works 42 hours a week, but strictly during the days, which has been a huge help to us during the day with response. So that means we're able to get 3 ambulances on the road when they're needed. And trust me, we have back-to-back-to-back ambulance calls very, very commonly. Okay? We have 2 fire prevention inspectors that are based here, with myself being a fire inspector as well. And then I also have a fire alarm technician that strictly does all of our fire alarm stuff, does our fiber. We have about 70 miles of fiber that runs throughout the city within all of the city buildings that he maintains. He maintains all of our fire alarm boxes, works very closely with IT for a lot of this stuff. You know, a lot of good things with the tunnel that's coming up here. We'll have fiber run in there for lighting and cameras and things like that to hopefully make things a lot safer. Again, that's put on his plate to be able to do that. So not only that is he is a Group 2 firefighter, so he's an addition to our staff during the day, as are the 2 fire inspectors. So they are all EMS trained and firefighter trained. So I kind of gave you a little bit of a lie here, saying that we only have 6 people on duty. When you start adding them up during the day, we actually have 6 plus the 2 fire inspectors plus the fire alarm technician, the chief, and myself, puts us right around 11 people here during the day. Okay? And then we have, finally, a full-time administrative assistant. And right now, she's splitting her time between here and the airport to assist with, you know, the administrations on both places. So she is wearing a dual hat, and kudos to her. So, any questions on staffing? Yes?
I know we've heard from other people that one of the challenges is, you know, finding staff. Do you run into the same?
Oh, what a great question that is. Retention and recruitment has really been going downhill really since, boy, I would say over the past 10 years. It used to be businesses would allow a lot of their employees to become volunteers and be able to leave their work and come in, and if we had a fire or general alarm or things like that, that just isn't the case anymore. During that whole economic downturn, where we started laying off a lot of people because businesses just were struggling, that's where really that started to end, where they needed all of their employees to stay at work. We just aren't seeing the volunteer or call paid base anymore. We try to get people to come in here, but that's just a portion of it. The other portion is that the state requires so many hours of training that it's really difficult. As you can see, this is the second one. We might have to be doing fire extinguisher training by ourselves tonight. So this is the second ambulance call within, 5 minutes or so. So with that being said, it's really difficult to get people to come on and want to stay because of the hours of training with that.
The resident is Caucasian direct. For a male subject who is found in the bathroom, he is in room 324. If this manager is off of him, I did expect her with 911, so you were calling on that. 32X7 at 1824.
So there'll be a lot of these interruptions, and I apologize for that. One of the things you just heard our station alerting system just a minute ago. That's how it comes in. You hear the bells. So just imagine sleeping and having those gongs go off in the middle of the night so many times a night, and they're getting woken up. And that's one of the biggest things with firefighters that health-wise that we really, really are concerned about, because as they get woken up by those bells, their heart rate goes from 60 to 130 like that. And they're doing that night after night after night after night. So burnout within the fire service is really, really increased. And that's why actually the statistic is when somebody retires from the fire service, usually they only survive about 7 years after retirement. So I'm hoping to be able to do that and get my return out of this. Yes.
Do you guys change shifts like week to week? Because
Another great question. So again, I'm saying all of these things, but I just want you to all understand that our shifts, they work 24-hour shifts. So the shift came on at 7 this morning, they don't leave until 7 tomorrow morning. And that's on a good day. But when there's overtime, we have people that are staying here at the fire station for 38 hours straight to make sure that we're covering the city. So that's a long stretch of time for people to be here. I do want to stress, though, and I want to hopefully help you understand that our firefighters really only work about 8 days a month. And the reason for that is because they work over an 8-week period, and they're working 42 hours in an 8-week cycle. So even though they come on, they work 24, have 2 days off, they come back in for another 24 hours, and then they have 4 days off. And that's the reason for the 4-shift cycle. So really every week they're moving ahead one day. So some days they're working weekends, and other days they're not working weekends. Great question. So yeah, they work 24-hour shifts, and I can tell you usually it was probably about a month ago in well, it was not even 24 hours. It was probably about 12 hours. We did 30 calls in a 12-hour period of time. We had every ambulance from the Upper Valley here in the city of Lebanon assisting us because we could not manage it all. So a lot of stuff goes on here in the city. Great questions.
Have you noticed
Yeah, go ahead.
increase in calls in the opioid crisis?
So unfortunately, we're not. No, I mean, it's not because of the opioid, because, I mean, I'll show you statistics on overdoses from 2018, but it's not just based on fentanyl or heroin or things like that. Some of these things are accidental overdoses because of same-day surgery, going home with, fentanyl patches or morphine patches or things like that, and they're just not being used correctly. They're adding one and then another, and that becomes a problem sometimes. So it's not just strictly based on the fentanyl or heroin or meth or things like that. Yes. However, the other day, obviously, there must have been a bad batch going around because we had, between Hanover, Hartford, and Lebanon, we had about 7 or 8 overdoses. So this was the Fire Act Safer grant that I was talking about. Again, it's federally funded program. 2017, we were awarded those 3 firefighters. The grant, again, pays that percentage of the firefighter each year. And again, it goes down sporadically on a percentage base. And then hopefully on the 4th year, the city picks up those firefighters and continues them being on the staff. I cannot stress enough. Go ahead. I'm
Well, I
sorry.
was just wondering, how do you get more staff? Is it
We
tax
ask
base?
for more money. It's tax
Yeah.
base is really what it is, and we try not to do that. And it's, you know, again, one of the things that we really try to pay attention to on the budget side of things is I'd love to be able to stand before you and say to you, you know, giving us 3 or 4 more firefighters is going to save on overtime. That's absolutely true for the first couple of years. But once those firefighters get tenure and they start getting a couple of weeks of vacation and they take off, we have to fill those shifts again. So at some point in time, that overtime is back up again. And it's not like we can play leapfrog every single time and say, hey, we need another 3 firefighters to help with this. So we try to really maintain that. And that's where this came in really helpful with that daytime position. So we try to think outside the box a little bit so that we're not putting the burden on you folks, but we still have to meet the demands of all of the incidents that are going on within the city. Yeah.
This particular grant, is it sort of a one-time?
No, you can go after it multiple times, but they don't award it usually multiple times. So yeah, we were very fortunate. You know, I think Claremont's had it a few times, you know, again, but they've got limited, really lot less staff than we do. So, you know, they look at that whole geographical location, how many responses they're making, what their staff is, and they base it on all of those needs.
So is the goal of the grant to try to grow your department and hope that you'll find ways to fund those people?
It is.
After 3 years, or is it sort of like bring on more staff because you have planned attrition and you're going to kind of...
Well, I think it's a little bit of both, to be truthful with you. You know, we know that we have, right now, we have some really tenured firefighters that have 24, 25, 26 years in the service. We know that those people are through attrition, are going to retire. So we know that we're going to keep. Matter of fact, 2 of these 3 firefighters are already been full-time staff now through attrition. So, you know, we have actually 3 of them. We have 1, and that's the daytime position right now. And that's all been through attrition. So we know we're not going to have to get rid of those, but it did not increase the budget because we had those people retire. Matter of fact, if anything, it probably went down a little bit because of, you know, their pay rates are probably higher over 25 or 26 years compared to somebody that's been on for 2. Okay. So yeah, it's very, very helpful. We're very lucky to be able to do that. And there's other types of grants out there that we have pursued, some in the fire prevention realm of things. I'm actually the chair of the Midwestern Hazmat team, and I'm going out searching for grants all the time, and I've been awarded a number of grants. And I'll talk about the Midwestern Hazmat team in just a few minutes to kind of, because most of you probably haven't heard of that before. So this is our call volume. So we roughly do about 3,700 calls annually. Now, with that being said, when you look at Hartford, Hartford's running about 2,000 calls a year. The same, probably a little bit less up in Hanover, depending on the time of year. When college students are in, probably a little bit more. They roughly have about 5,000 students up there. We know what they partake in a lot of times, so there's a lot of runs that are going from picking somebody up at a frat house or a dorm and bringing them over to Dick's house, but again, it constitutes a call for service. So, you know, during those times of years, Green Key, you know, when they're doing the bonfire, alumni, when everybody comes in, a little bit busier time for them. But again, roughly they're doing about 2,000 calls as well. So we're doing about 1,600 calls more than them annually. And sometimes it's even maybe a little bit doubled between the 2 compared to us. So we're running about, anywhere between 10 and 15 times a day. I'm sure you hear the sirens in the city quite a bit. But again, a lot of staff vehicles are going out as well. So any echo level call, when we talk about echo level calls in the state of New Hampshire, there is a call disposition that gives you either an Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, or an echo level, and then on the reverse there's an Omega. An Omega is something like pink eye. It really doesn't need our toothache. Believe it or not, we go out on those calls. Okay, which really hurts us at times. Not because we don't mind going out and helping, the customer, because we are customer driven. But when you take an ambulance out of service for an hour to bring somebody up to the hospital, and another call comes in, you're not sure if you're going to be able to go to a person that may be in a much more dire need. Let me just touch base too on that. This all works hand in hand with the hospital at DHMC. As you know, DHMC has many satellite hospitals now that they've kind of encumbered. Up at DHMC, there's so many calls going in there into that emergency room that we actually get backed up, meaning we can't leave the emergency room because the patient stays on our cot until a bed becomes free. So that's what happened when I told you we had those 30 calls that day. We were backed up 8 deep in the ED waiting for a bed in the hallway or in a room. And that is particularly problematic for us because when you don't have an ambulance that can respond, when people continue to call in, we're having to call from further out. We had to call Golden Cross down in Claremont to respond here. That's 25 minutes. That's unacceptable when you have somebody that's having difficulty breathing or chest pain. Now set aside, we're sending a staff vehicle with oxygen and trying to care for them, but we're waiting for a transport ambulance to get here that's taken 25 minutes. And not only are we doing that, we're taking them out of their community, and that means if they get busy, they're having to call from further away to do that, and it's one problem after another, and somebody has to deal with this whole big problem. And that's why you've seen in the paper now they want to try to put a patient towers up at DHMC at the tune of $200 and some odd million, which creates another staggering problem for us. I have to have an inspector up there every single day dealing with a healthcare facility. So now I only have one inspector to go around and do the rest of the city. Everything creates a snowball effect with everything that happens.
So while they're under construction, you have to have an inspector there?
Yeah.
Really?
And that's not uncommon. As a matter of fact, Deputy Chief Sykes, when he was here, he was stationed up at the hospital when they were building that facility in its initial stages.
Is that because of the size of the project or because it's a medical?
Size of the project, that it's a healthcare facility, there's a lot more fire protection issues. It has to have fire retardant material that's sprayed on it. There's lots of nooks and crannies, obviously sprinkler systems. You're having people that are, incapacitated that need to have separation where, you don't want a fire to jump from one room to the other should there be one. So a number of different issues that need to make sure. And that it's building. If somebody's not up there, sometimes corners get cut, and that's not what we want here. So, yeah.
I believe part of that project is also an expansion of the ER.
It
Do
is.
you anticipate that helping, hurting, or potentially just balancing out because they're going to have increased capacity, which means they might take more, even more?
Obviously, I think it's just like the firefighter thing that I just talked to. I think it will help for a couple of years. And then as you start to see all these satellite hospitals start to come up here, it's just going to create the same staggering effect that we have.
Do they provide any assistance to, I know they provide, they do provide some minimal assistance to the city, but
Yeah.
do they provide any of their own ambulance or?
So we could call them if we wanted to, but we're a 911 service. They're more of a transport service, and they go to Boston.
So if
So
someone needs to go between facilities. for different
exactly. And I'm really glad you brought that up, because one of the critical things that we do have here in this fire station is, and this is staggering when I say this, we have roughly 26 paramedics here at this fire station. That is unheard of, to have a department that has almost all paramedics here. So that means every one of our employees, including myself as a paramedic, have gone to 2 years of advanced schooling where we can provide up to around 130 invasive drugs to people. We can stop hearts, start them up, slow them down, speed them up, give all these types of things. You're going to see some of that tonight, what they can do, and they'll discuss that on the Medi-Kelly. But it is staggering to be able to do that. A lot of these people come to us with their paramedics, so it's not been a cost that's been associated with doing it. They've already come as a paramedic, you know, and it's a huge success for us. But with the APD, we have to also be trained as PIFT paramedics, which is paramedic interfacility transfers. So when you think about that, they're coming out of there with antibiotics, heparin, drips, and things like that for clotting. But we're able to go over and provide that service from interfacility hospitals to DHMC. The other thing that's staggering is what we're seeing, because we are PIF trained, is we're getting calls to bring people from APD to Concord, APD to Burlington, which takes an ambulance out of service for at least 2 to 2.5 hours, and then we're down to 2 buses. So again, when I start talking about these snowball effects, these are the things that we deal with, and sometimes it's late at night, 11 o'clock at night, we're sending, you know, 2 firefighters to Concord, and we're not recalling staff because of that, to keep the overtime down. So now we're down to, you know, 5 people here in the city. So one of the big things you'll hear me talk about is surplanting. It's one thing, a word that we really, really dislike in this organization, is surplanting. And what I mean by that is calling mutual aid from other departments to come in to our city when we have not used all of our resources here within the city. And there are a lot of organizations out there that will do that. And let me give you an example. I won't even name departments, but a department has only 3 people on it, okay? And they go out on an ambulance call, it leaves 1 person. That 1 person cannot operate that ambulance. All of a sudden, the second ambulance comes in for that same department. Well, they haven't got coverage in yet because they haven't called it, or they aren't able to get it. And what are they doing? They're calling over to the city of Lebanon to now go over to their community to pick up somebody that's sick or injured or whatever it may be. And we call that surplanting sometimes, when you have not utilized all of your resources in your own organization, you know, and you call on another. We hate that word here. We want to get out there for our citizens without having to call anybody from a different organization. That's what we choose to do. We strive to do that. So, but that takes staffing as well. So when you look up here, this is by incident type to kind of give you an understanding. We have codes in our National Fire Incident database. That 111 that you see in front, that is the code for building fires. Now, we do about 12, and this is again 2018 where I took this, we did 12 building fires. That's doubled when we go mutual aid. So we go mutual aid to Canaan, Enfield, Hartford, Hanover, Plainfield, and all of those. So that's just here within the city, but we also do other structure fires, mutual aid, so you could double that. So we're doing about 25 building fires a year, okay? The cooking fires, we do about 11 of them. Again, that's still within a building, but the difference on that is whether or not it gets outside of a specific compartment. So if it started in the living room and it gets into the dining room and a bedroom, then that actually gets coded as a building fire. If it's a cooking fire and stays within the stove area or the oven area, then it's doesn't leave that room of origin, then it's coded as a cooking fire. Still a fire, but, and then you have your automobile fires, and then if you look at 321, you can see our EMS calls are at 1,934 calls. And those are broken up, and I'll show you those in just a few minutes. Some of those are with motor vehicle accidents, and some of them are with no transports. We do a lot of dry runs. We do lift assists. We go over to Quail Hollow, Harvest Hill, Woodlands, all of that. When somebody falls, we go over, we pick them up, we get them back into bed or into their chair. We do not charge for those. So dry runs are no charge. So I just want everybody to understand that. So we don't want you to hesitate with calling the ambulance, because a lot of people feel, oh, I don't want this ambulance bill. Here's the thing. If something happens and we respond and you decide that you're okay and you don't want to go to the hospital, we're not charging you for that. The only time you're going to get a charge, and it's not even going to come to you, we have a ambulance contract with a biller. Everything is sent to them, it goes through your insurance and that sort of thing. We try to make sure. Now, I know, because ambulance bills can be pretty steep. So that's why we're not going out there and charging people these astronomical rates for somebody that may have fallen or slipped on the ice and just needed help getting back into their home. We're doing that at no cost. That's what you pay your taxes for. And that's what we're here for. Again, you can see that the motor vehicle accidents are pretty high. We cover a lot of interstate. We cover all the way from exit 16 all the way to 20. So that's a long ways, and we get some pretty hellacious wrecks on that interstate. And then you can see the congestion. It's better now, but the congestion on the west side, we get lots of motor vehicle accidents. So we're over there quite a bit. If you haven't seen, we have a lot of traffic delays here in the city, probably to get worse over the next year. There is a lot of projects that are going on. This, again, creates problems for us with response times. So we're having to adjust our staffing. If we can't get to the west side, I don't want 2 people over there fighting a fire and we're delayed getting there. So what do? We put our daytime person over there to give them an extra body so that they can do some firefighting operations while we're waiting for us. And then we do some other unique things. We may call Hanover in on the Route 10 side of things to assist if we get a building fire right off the back on an auto aid. So we try to do some different things to help with some of those response times. And then we have down here the carbon monoxide calls. It actually is pretty low. Why? Because most of our carbon monoxide calls come this time of year when it's cold. And they're probably on a steady increase since the economic downturn, where people were saving money, where they wouldn't clean their furnaces, they wouldn't clean their chimneys, they wouldn't do a lot of those things. We were seeing a little bit more increase in carbon monoxide. Since the economy's picked up, things are better. You see this peaks and valleys related to carbon monoxide. Okay? So here is our EMS incidents. When you start looking at it by number, this is 2018. It's the abdominal pains are 108. Altered mental statuses are 87. Altered mental statuses could be, like diabetes or somebody's fallen and hit their head, hypoxia, whatever it may be. Breathing problems, 258. That encompasses a wide variety of things. Asthma, COPD, emphysema, those sort of things. chest pain, falls, lift assist, 107 lift assists. That means we're not getting paid any revenue for lift assists going out. Psych and behavioral, that is on an increase. As we all know, mental health is really struggling to meet the needs of a lot of our behavioral and psychological type of incidents that we go on. It's hard to get them in to be seen. So what do? Their next resort when they're feeling down is they call the fire department, whether it be for depression or sometimes they just need somebody to talk to. Believe it or not, we have times where people just want to go to the hospital to get a warm meal, and we're transporting them up there for things like that. Overdoses, somebody asked about that. So we had in 2018, 28. It may seem high to you, but that's everything that's going on with people taking, our same-day surgeries. Believe it or not, a lot of people are struggling because the pain management side of things is so backed up. So people that are having chronic back issues where they need to go and see a professional for pain, they're not getting over there. So what are they? They're prescribed prescriptions, and that's how the whole process starts sometimes. Okay? And then you have your motor vehicle accidents, your seizures, and then your medical alarms. A medical alarm really consists of, the lifeline, I've fallen type of thing, or they have the little pull station at some of our elderly housing, that sort of stuff that we're responding to. So this is where we bridge the gap. When I came here, we only did high frequency calls. What a high frequency call to us is your box alarms, your fire alarms, your automobile fires, your cooking fires, and things like this. Things that we do a lot of, we're very, very good at. What we weren't good at is the low frequency stuff. The ropes rescue, confined space, trench rescue, the things that could potentially injure or kill somebody. We were really, really low at that. So we decided that this is an area we really need to bridge, and we need to come up to a good level. We're not at the perfect level yet. We got a lot of work to do. But what we do have is we have good neighbors in our organizations that also have people that are trained in there that we can bring back and make. It's almost like a regional thing where we're bringing back enough trained people to be able to meet the demands for some of these things, because it is very manpower intensive or staff intensive to be able to meet some of these things, especially when you're going over a vertical cliff or embankment, or doing a swift water rescue, or going into the Mascoma when there's an ice rescue that needs to go on. It's very intensive, and it's low frequency. We don't do it all the time. So that's where you tend to get your injuries. Again, like I said, it's resource intensive. The organization and then communication. One of the things you heard us get dispatched, you heard the bells go off. Right here, you see these new black things here. This is going to be our new station alerting system. So when I talk to you about those gongs going off, okay, if you can picture this new station alerting system that's going to say this: wakey, 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 time to get up. So it's not that bad, but it's going to rev up. So it's going to start low, and then it's going to get increasingly louder. And there are lights on in the bunk rooms that are there. Instead of these white lights coming on, it's this nice little dim red light that starts to ratchet up and things like that. This is going to hopefully increase the longevity of our staff. One of the biggest things that people don't understand is that we put a lot of money into our apparatus and into our equipment. We put very little money into our people. So we need to do a better job of that and balancing that. But it takes money. It is very expensive to be able to buy good wellness fitness equipment. But with that, we can't just say, here's your equipment, go in there, lift weights, do whatever you want, because the worst thing we can do is if somebody has an underlying medical condition and I have somebody going in there and something happens, again, that's problematic. Okay, so we need to make sure that we're sending people for physicals before they start working out and doing all of those things. But it does cost money. So this is our coverage area. We cover 41 square miles, and then we provide primary EMS coverage to the following: Lebanon, which includes West Lebanon, Enfield, Plainfield, and now Grantham. So we go all the way to Grantham to cover their medical needs. Okay, and we have 3 ambulances. I'm really proud to say this, as an organization and a department, when you're talking about bringing in revenue, we bring in roughly $1.1 to $1.2 million in revenue through ambulance billing. So it's not like we're not giving back or doing our fair share to put back into the general fund of this. And that doesn't include what we get from plans review and fire inspections and things like that are added onto that stuff. Okay. Again, our call volume is right around that 3,800. 70% of those are EMS calls and 30% are fire. The other proud thing that you'll hear when we talk about history, you heard that bell go off. We have 400 master boxes here in the city. And what that means is between street boxes and master boxes, I should say. Like if you were to look at the Whipple building across the street, it has fire protection in it. If a sprinkler system goes off in that building, it automatically trips that box and rings here to the fire station and over to Station 2. So we have 400 of those that are spread throughout the city, the west side, hospitals. The DHMC alone has about 12 master boxes in it. So you can imagine how often we're on the road responding to somebody's smoke detector going off, somebody hit the sprinkler system, a duct detector. All of those things are ringing these boxes in on a regular basis. And we have 400 of them. So, yeah.
So if someone calls 911 from Grantham, it's Leb that's actually coming to take care of them?
That is correct. Our ambulance is responding. Now they have what we call they're going to get toned out as a first responder. So they have members on their fire department that will respond as a first responder, start care, and then we are the transporting ambulance. Now if they don't have anybody respond down there, yes, we are their primary ambulance. Yep. Yeah.
When I was a kid, I remember going to the fire hall and seeing maybe 2, ladder trucks or whatever, but I don't remember a lot of ambulances. Have fire halls always taken care of the EMS side of it?
So so coming from Hartford, we always ran the ambulance over there. Lebanon did not. It was in 1999 that Lebanon took over the ambulance service and started to get the ambulances in. Before that, they would run a first response with an engine and would respond and do extrications and medical priority stuff and that sort of stuff. So there was 2 private ambulance companies in there before that, Golden Cross and Care Plus. We decided to take that over because obviously we would rather have the revenue here in the city than give it to somebody else. Great question. So again, that top number has gone up a little bit because we just had some new people get their paramedic, and we have, by the way, we have our first full-time female firefighter here in the city of Lebanon, and she is tough. I don't even think I could do some of the things that she's able to do, but she's really, really good. Has been a perfect fit for our organization. Can't stress it enough. And when I talk about the 4 people that we've brought on, we got the cream of the crop. I mean, we're seeing a decline in people wanting to come on. I mean, we'll get a lot of people that are testing to want to be firefighters, but they're missing out on what we call candidate physical ability testing. They don't have that. They don't meet the requirements when they put their resume in. These four, we got the cream of the crop. Some had paramedic, some had firefighter 2, some had firefighter 3. We do have a really tough, stringent rookie time for over a year long where we're training, but they have this down. So, a lot of this stuff within 5 or 6 months, they were saying, no, we're taking them off probation. They can start filling shifts and doing those things because they were really good and had their head on really straight. So, but yeah, so we have the 6 advanced. They're able to do a number of things. They can do the Narcan, they can give cardiac drugs as an advanced. So it's not like they're not able to do a lot of things. It's just as not advanced as the paramedics. And then we have some basic emergency medical technicians, such as our fire alarm technician and our our fire inspectors. Let me just talk briefly about this bottom one. So in our organization, we have 11 hazardous material technicians. That's a lot of training. I chair the New Hampshire Midwestern Hazmat team, as I was the chair of the state hazmat collaborative team for all of the different hazmat teams that are out there. We cover 13 communities. So I am not saying to you that those 11 people go out and cover 11 communities. What I'm saying to you is that the Midwestern Hazmat team covers that. Now within that coverage area, I have people on the team from New London, Sutton, Newbury, Centipede, Hanover, and we will go out and meet. We have trucks that are stationed here, and we have trucks that are stationed south in Newbury, so that we have a much better response time. And when I talk about pieces of equipment, one piece that I have in my office, it's called an Ahura, is $86,000 for one piece of equipment that's this big that has 80,000 chemicals in it. But it has an infrared beam, so I can come up to the table and see some sort of a powder or a liquid. I can either shoot it with the infrared beam and it will go through the library and tell me what it is, or I can take a sample of it and put it in a vial and do that, or I can take a sample of the liquid. It obviously does not do gases. I have 2 of those. The other thing that we have is called an area ray detection. We use that during our time when we have our New Hampshire primaries come here to Dartmouth College. We will set those up with the civil support teams. They are wireless and will read back all the different chemicals like lower explosive limit, radiation, ammonia, explosive, all of that stuff secretly back to a computer so nobody gets alarmed during these primaries. We also do it for Dartmouth graduation. We'll put those up all over the perimeter. Those machines alone are $150,000 to be able to do that.
But they're like a metal detector for hazmat materials?
It's exactly correct. It actually sniffs in all of this stuff just as you're walking around. It's taking samples, and if they get a hit on it, it will alert the incident commander and go, we got a hit on this specific area array, and then we'll send out a team to investigate it with other different detectors.
They're called area rays?
Area array detector, yeah. So we have a cache of equipment on the hazmat side of things that are here within this community. Really, a lot of it's based because Chief Christopoulos really was the start of this hazmat team. And then he gets busy, and then it came over to me, and I've been taking this along and continuing to build on it and build on it. So we have the ability to have that here in the community because we do have Novo Nordisk, we have the industry over on the Etna Road, we have the airport, obviously the facility over on the west side. So lots of different things, but we have that equipment here for us to use at any time we need to. And we do use it at the police department and at the airport frequently on white substances, powder substances, and things like that. Questions on that at all? Okay. So here are our fire stations. I would love to say that they're brand new. They're not. We use them. The big running joke here is if you go to Hanover and Hartford, it's Taj Mahal compared to Detroit. This is Detroit. And I'm not saying that in a manner. We use our fire stations. We use our trucks. We're out there on the road as much as we can, and we're going from call to call. So this, obviously, this is what the department looks like today. This is Station 2. The big problems with some of these is it's age. I would never want to move out of the station. It's history for me. I know that someday, and they're looking at this now, trying to figure out what's the best avenue, whether or not we combine the two stations into a central point to meet with our response times, but have all of our staffing in one location. So they're looking at that right now. But we really need to make sure that right now with Station 2, they're able to get out and meet those needs at Quail Hollow and some of those other places where we have a higher incident of medical issues, but we need to get there. We can't try to make it through from here all the way to Quail Hollow in a short period of time, especially with all the construction that's going on. It's almost impossible. This is our Station 3. This is the one that's out in heading out towards Enfield on Route 4. And this is our airport fire station that has our ARF truck in it. Okay. So let me move on here. This is how we keep track of all of our technical rescue stuff. This requires a lot of continuing education to keep our different type of abilities that we have: confined space, technical rescue, hazmat, ropes rescue, all of that. So we color coordinate everything and make sure that we're hitting on those high times. And what you see here with this mannequin, we're able to do a lot of training. We have a software product that we use on our computer. It's called Target Solutions, where we can actually go on and push out all the training to each of the different shifts so that we have good continuity of training. And lucky me, I know when people aren't doing it because I get an email. And that means that I have to go and say, hey, how come you didn't do your training? And they're happy when I do that. But no, we really have a really good high percentage of people getting these things done, and I rarely have to do any of that stuff. So here again, this is what we're talking about with confined space. It's going into really, really tight places. We have all the equipment to do that. We have, at the technician level, 14 members. So not everybody is trained in this. Some people are claustrophobic, and we don't want to put people in those tight places that really don't want to be there. It's setting them up for failure. We don't want to have people fail. So we went out, we got about $13,500 in grant money to purchase the equipment, and that's everything from skate bottles to the ropes to the tripods, all of that stuff for us to do that. This city has a lot of confined spaces when you start thinking about all the pump houses and things that we have here that are underground. So our DPW or water department will call the fire department anytime they're making a permitted entry into a confined space so that we know that they're going in, because we are their primary rescue company. Okay? This is our Swiftwater Rescue. So we have technicians. Pretty much everybody has gone through the Swiftwater Rescue. So we go out and we train in the Mascoma. Sometimes you'll see us out there diving into the water, doing our training. This is an annual event for us. We have to do it for Con Ed. So everybody has to get in the water and do swims. They have to do grabs. They have to do reach, row, throw, and go. We do boogie boarding. We do all of that stuff. And we have them let water out of the Mascoma Dam so that we increase it to about anywhere between 1,000 to 1,200 cubic feet per second. So those of you who don't know how fast that is, when Hurricane Irene came through, that was traveling at 120,000 cubic feet per second. It was moving. And we had lots of rescues going on over on that side in the Upper Valley when Hurricane Irene came through. One of them that gave me these gray hairs that I have today, and that was we had to, the big propane tank that's out in back of Coles, that was getting ready to go underwater. If we couldn't shut the valves off, we would have had raw propane bubbling out, and if it had reached an ignition source, who knows what the plaza would look like today. We had to do a reconnaissance in there, put people in, and shut those valves off at that speed of that water. So yeah, so swiftwater rescue, we take it really serious, but we train a lot because we do have a lot of moving components to this. If you've seen this down here, people on the bridge are going to be working. In those rapids, you know how fast that is going between central, central paper and clean laundry. It is moving. So if anybody falls in the water there, they're either getting caught on something or they're heading down to the little pond at the bottom. So here's our levels. We have level 1, we have 11 members. We have level 2, we have 9. But we got all of our people are at awareness as well. And we went out and got a grant for $35,000 to purchase the equipment. That wasn't budgeted. It was all from a grant. Here's our ice rescue. This is the time of year that we like to go out and do this. The ice is getting thin. We get out there with our boat. We get our people out there. They fall through. They have to self-rescue themselves, or we'll have them rescue other people as well. And that's how we do the training. One of the biggest things that people don't realize is that if we don't respond to those animal incidents where they're out on the ice, guess who's going out there? The public. And now we're going out for somebody from the public that's fallen in. So no, we don't like to go out there and do this because it's, again, a high risk, low frequency type of thing that we're doing. But we know if we don't go out there, that somebody's going to go out there and try to rescue them, and we're going to be out there anyways. So, and here's our ropes rescue. So we have everything from rigging from high angle to scree systems. We have everything that's set up. You'll see all of this stuff tonight. One of the biggest things that we're pretty proud of is now we have a lot of our structural collapse struts. So if we have a collapse or things like that, we're able to secure the building and stabilize the building. You'll see those. We were given those for free from the neighboring department in Hartford because they did not have a place for them. We got a new rescue truck. We had plenty of space for them. Yes?
So what happens during a rope rescue? What actually goes on during a
So during a rope rescue, during a high angle rope rescue, we anchor off and we actually rappel down to the victim. We'll bring our Stokes basket up over, and then we'll bring them up and over utilizing, a bipod or a tripod or whatever. Yep. I did, roughly 30 rescues at the Quechee Gorge in my 23 years of being over there. No, I shouldn't say rescues. There's a lot of recoveries. So, questions? Yeah. It's okay.
What would be sort of your typical kind of call wearing your hazmat hat, like with your hazmat stuff?
Yeah, so our typical calls used to be white powder calls, anthrax, the scares, and things like that. But now most of the time it's a common commodity, hydrocarbons, so gasoline, propane incidents, those sort of things. This time of year, the plow truck is plowing and shears off a valve, and we have, propane escaping. We'll respond to those. But a lot of them are leaking gas tanks. We really, the hazardous materials industry has such a high standard when it comes to things like DOT and transportation and things like that. We really have a very low volume of hazardous materials incidents. Even going over the interstate or on rail, that stuff is so well protected that you don't get a lot. Now, if it derails and it goes over a big embankment, then, you know, all bets are off. But those are the biggest calls, are the hydrocarbons, propane, that sort of methane calls. I mean, I will say that we here in the city have methane now down at Clean Laundry, and then over at Pike and at DHMC we have compressed natural gas. So we have those things as well. I just can't stress to you all enough the safety that goes within this. I mean, from everything, from the time of travel that these trucks come into the city, there's specific times that they're only allowed to come in to drop off their product, because we don't want it in high traffic times. So we limit that stuff. We have flame detectors on these things that shut the whole system down. You know, it is over at Pike, I can actually sign in my car and see the propane, the compressed natural gas tanks and see what they're doing on my computer. So lots of good technology and computer technology that we have available to us to know what we're responding to. It's very safe.
I know they've been talking about putting the oil trucks down where Westboro, in the Westboro area, y'all are involved with all that, and what's gonna happen there?
Well, I mean, it's propane that's down there, and it's a very contentious discussion that's gone on. You know, again, coming from the hazmat world and being a part of that, I know how safe it is. It doesn't mean that things can't happen, you know, because they do. But you know, bottom line is that steel that's on is very, very thick. You know, it's just not something where somebody backs a car into it that you're going to have this big escape. It's not gonna, you know. I mean, there's got to be really catastrophic things that happen. So, you know, but it's there, and unfortunately, it's on railroad property, and that limits us sometimes as to. Now, I will tell you, they've been very, very good about letting us go down and do, you know, stain tube testing, where we want to make sure that there's mercaptan inside those rail cars, where we will do it. And mercaptan is an additive that goes into the propane so you can smell it, because it is an odorless gas. So we want to go down and make sure that those tank cars are coming through with an odorant onto it or in it. So that's there. We're able to go down. They've been very gracious about letting us go down there and do a lot of training and things. They got it all fenced off, so they're keeping a lot of people that may be on the railroad tracks wandering through. So they've done a lot of security things to manage that stuff, which is good. So that's kind of where we're at.
Does
But
that fall under the hazmat, or does that?
it actually falls under Environmental Protection Agency, so it's federal. Yeah. So EPA's gone down there and reviewed their action plans and things like that. So, great question. Anybody else? So do you want to get up and stretch real quick? I'm going to put my fire extinguisher one on, and then we'll get you fighting some fires. So when I came here, this was our first piece of apparatus. Just kidding. I did not ride it. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about fire extinguishers. And please, again, there's a lot of questions that are going to be brought up, like, where do you get rid of fire extinguishers when you've used them? What's the best type of fire extinguisher? I will answer all those questions for you. So just please raise your hand and ask them. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over really how to utilize a fire extinguisher and what we teach to our businesses. We teach about probably anywhere between 1,500 and 2,000 people in the business aspect how to utilize extinguishers. So our fire prevention will go out as much as we need to. We'll do fire extinguisher trainings. You'll see our prop that's out there tonight. It works off of propane, so we try to make sure that we're not putting bad hydrocarbons into the atmosphere. It is propane driven, but it's clean. It uses water. But the one thing that we do is we have you use real extinguishers. There are props out there that you can use a water mist. It does not do any good for you if you don't know what it looks like to utilize a real fire extinguisher. So that's what we do here. Easy cleanup, and it's, you know, it's not hazardous or anything. It's sodium bicarb. So So as we get started, one of the biggest things that I want to be very, very clear with fire extinguishers is fire extinguishers work off of the incipient stage of fires. That means the smallest, most basic type of fires. Waste paper basket, cardboard, paper, things like that. That's when you're going to want to use the fire extinguisher. If you walk into a room like this that's fully on fire, it is going to laugh at you when you pick up one of those extinguishers, and it is not going to go out. Okay, I'm just here forewarning you now. It's meant for small incipient stage fires. The other thing that is primary, you need to make sure that you notify all the occupants from within the building first before you start anything. So if you come across a fire, your first thing in order of business should be making sure that you are finding a pull station, pulling that pull station, notifying all the occupants within the building so they can start their evacuation out of the building. Then your next step, if you have the ability to do so and you've been trained, is to try to do your best with extinguishment of the fire. Because what's going to happen if you don't notify the occupants, you go and try to put that fire out, every 60 seconds a fire doubles in size. Okay? So it's going to start growing on you. And if you haven't notified people within the occupancy or the building, things are going to start happening. You're going to start getting production of different types of gases, carbon monoxide, hydrogen cyanide within the building. When people start breathing that in, it's not always the fire that kills them, it's the smoke. Okay? So make sure that you are pulling pull station. Now, does everybody know what I mean by a pull station? You see the little, at every single exit in most occupancies except for single family or two family homes. But if you go to the theater, to a hotel, any time that you have a fire and you go outside of the entrance, right within 6 feet of that is going to be a pull station. If you pull that, it is going to sound all the alarms in the building. Okay? So please make sure that you notify the occupants of the building. Secondly, if you have a business that you work in, you really should know what type of extinguisher you have. I'm going to go over a few of them with you tonight. The most common one is what you see over here on the side. It's called a dry chemical, or an ABC we call it. What those extinguishers do is you're able to put out 3 different classes of fire. And those classes are up here on the screen. So when you look at this, this goes with different shapes and colors as well. And I can show you those on the extinguisher. But if you have a green triangle with an A, that is a combustible material, wood, paper, plastic, those sort of things. If you have a Class B fire, it is flammable liquids or combustible liquids. So your diesel, your gasoline, your kerosene, things like that. Please understand, when you have a flammable or a combustible, anytime it gets out of its container, it's going to move. So be very careful tonight, because you're going to have a liquid fire with propane in it, and if you plunge that ABC extinguisher, you will see it splatter to the outside. That's what we're trying to limit. You want to have a nice even approach when you're sweeping, not a plunge effect. Okay? Your Class C is your electrical equipment. The big key thing here is to make sure, a lot of times what's burning is a combustible. However, if you put that combustible out, it's still energized. It may reignite again. So you really need to find the breaker or the emergency shutoff to a piece of equipment or something like that to de-energize the fire, and that way you won't have the combustibles catching on fire as well. Okay? So knowing where your breakers are, that sort of thing, and where your emergency shutoffs are. There is a Class D as well. It's a yellow star. That is for combustible metals. Your things like titanium, magnesium, things like that, if you put any sort of moisture to them, they're actually going to kind of almost have an erupt explosion, and you'll start seeing particles flying through the air. Those things need to have a dry powder to them where you don't have any moisture. And those are usually in a big yellow extinguisher, okay? And then your shape is going to be a yellow star. So again, here is your Class A fire. Now again, what you see up here is what you're going to see on the fire extinguisher. There are pictorials on there for you. So if it's a ABC extinguisher, you're going to see a trash can or wood or paper that's on there. And you can start passing this extinguisher around if you'd like, and you can see some of the different pictorials that are out there. We'll start one down here. Now, if at any time when you're looking at this extinguisher, you actually see a cross through one of those pictorials, it means it will not put out that class of fire. So if there's a X through the, let's say the electrical, the Class C, it's not meant to put that out. It's only an AB extinguisher, okay? Tonight, you are going to be dealing with a 10-pounder. So it's going to have some heft to it. These things here, when I show you, if you look at the top of this, it has a plastic head on it. When you go and buy one for your home, you really should think about buying them with a metal head. These are more disposable. Rather, if you had a metal head, you could bring it to Hampshire Fire over on the Etna Road. They can refill it for you at a much lower amount than if you were to go out and buy a brand new one. Okay? So, a couple of things. It works off of cooling. Can you use an ABC extinguisher on a wood paper? Absolutely you can, and it will put it out. There are a number of different other types of extinguishers out there. We use what we call an APW, an air pressurized water. So what's the limit to that? Well, there really isn't any. If you have air and you have water, you have an extinguisher, and it's cheap. The only thing that we're concerned is during this time of year when it's cold, you don't want to leave them out on the truck because they freeze. So what do? Sometimes we put a little antifreeze in there or something so that they're not freezing up. But a water can works off of cooling and that sort of stuff, okay? Again, here's your Class B. It works on a blanketing effect, just like what you've seen if you were to have a stove fire, where you put the lid on it and you're reducing the oxygen, that sort of thing. So same exact thing. We get blankets or baking powder, if you remember. But again, it also can interrupt the chemical chain reaction at the fuel surface. Again, these are for your flammable liquids and your combustible liquids. So this right here can do a Class A fire and a Class B fire without any issues. Okay. Class C, this extinguisher can be used on a Class C fire as well, as long as you are making sure you disable the energized equipment so that it's the combustibles that are potentially burning. Okay, so you saw the pictorials on here. You're going to have a trash can for the Class A. You're going to have a gas can for the Class B. You're going to have an outlet like you see here with a plug for the Class C. Okay? And again, what if you have a cross through one of those? It won't work on that type of fire. Very good. So again, portable fire extinguishers, that's what they are. They're meant to be portable. A lot of times you'll see them hung up. They usually are hung up at waist high. We do that because we still need to think about our ADA folks that are out there where they can go ahead and still be able to remove it if they needed to. So about waist height. Some of the ones that you see out in some of the hotels, they actually have a supervised line to it. So if you actually pull it out of the box, it will send a supervisory alarm. So at some of your healthcare facilities, some of your educational facilities, things like that, we don't want kids taking it out there and shooting it off in the hallway to have fun. So we want to be able to monitor that. Okay? They weigh anywhere between 2.5 and 10 pounds. We have 10-pounders for you. Tina told me tonight that everybody was really rugged and that the 10-pounders would be fine, so that's what we got. They do not have wheels on them, so you cannot wheel them to where they need to go. They are limited in a capacity, so you will see tonight there's 5 extinguishers down there. I thought there was going to be 30 people. I guarantee you I can probably put out the amount of people that we have here with 2 extinguishers when we're utilizing tonight. It's amazing how much fire you can put out with an extinguisher. So keep that in the back of your mind tonight when you're doing some extinguishment. Here lies the problem, is your range. When you have a water can, you can spray up to about 20 feet. You can put your thumb over it and make it a little mist, do that. When you have a dry chemical, you see that there's only a little nozzle on here. So that means what? You're getting a little bit closer. So if you have a pretty good fire and you're getting closer, you're going to potentially start feeling that heat. I always tell people, just remember this, if you get too close to that fire and it flashes up on you, it may take one of your eyebrows. Then you have a big decision to make. That is, do you shave the other one off or go with one eyebrow? So really be cautious out of all seriousness. When you're approaching a fire, you're going to start approaching and you're going to start doing the sweep. We want to make sure we're knocking that fire down. We don't want it to get bigger. Okay, and we'll show you how to do that tonight. But again, this type is anywhere between 1 and 6 feet. So you can see you're getting a little bit closer to that fire, which can be potentially dangerous, especially when you're dealing with hydrocarbon fires, diesel, flammable liquids, gasoline, things like that that put off a lot of heat. You'll feel the heat tonight. We're using propane, and you'll feel that as we start going in, and you'll see the flame heights are about anywhere between 4 and 5 feet. But it's nothing that everybody here will be able to put it out fine. Okay? The other thing is the duration. If some of these, they get real old, so inside there's a powder and there's a pickup tube. If you tip it up like this, that pickup tube is not going to pick up that powder that's in there. It's meant to be held upright, just like this. Sometimes these things sit underneath your cabinets for years and years and years, and it cakes the powder. You really need to tap that to get that kind of loosened up a little bit, so keep that in mind before you use it. Tap that, and then you'll be able to discharge it without a problem. Sometimes these things stick on. So if you're using it in your house, just understand if it sticks on, every time you open up your cabinets, you're going to have dry chemical probably falling out of them. Okay? Unless even when you clean it completely up, there's going to be a little bit.
I was going to ask that.
So it's on a hydro test is what it is. So every 5 years they need to be hydro tested, and what you're testing is the canister for the most part to make sure that it's going to hold the pressure, because these are filled with a pressure. Okay?
You mentioned that they can cake up. Other than that, the extinguisher powder doesn't get old or
No.
expired.
No.
Good and done.
No, and if you bring it on, usually what will happen during that 5 years, people have these on their boats for 20 years and something happens and it'll still work. But when I'm sitting here teaching everybody, every 5 years it needs to go through a hydro test. When it goes over there, they'll actually put new powder in there for you and that sort of thing. So they're putting that stuff. They actually use the old powder for people like me that are training people like you. So they give us a reduced rate when we're having a rental of extinguishers and stuff.
I had 3 big ones that were, I don't remember if they were out of date or the gauge started to drip down. I
Yeah.
remember I took them up to Hampshire and had them all recharged.
Yep, perfect. Hampshire Fire is if you go out past the ranch on Etna Road and keep heading out that way, it's going to be on the right, just as you start to come up over the crest of the hill.
They'll test it.
Oh, they'll do everything for you, yep. Yep. Okay. So here are the parts to this. Now some of them have a hose on it that you'll see, and it has a little horn on the end of it. Some of them do not have a hose on it, depending on the different sizes. In here you see that there's a safety pin. If you remove that safety pin, it's armed and ready to go. So if you squeeze this, you're going to have dry chemical everywhere. I'm going to go over the acronym in just a few minutes on how to operate one of these. But so this is the safety pin. The other one looks just like a regular pin here that you would pull out. You want to squeeze that? No. No. Good answer. Okay. So there is a carrying handle. That's how it's meant to be carried. Don't hold on to the trigger and things, okay? So here, I can go ahead and hold on to the carrying handle. If I had the pin out and push this down, that's when it's going to go off, okay? You have your pressure gauge, and up front here is your pressure gauge. It's meant to be at 12 o'clock, okay? So this is not ready to go. I probably wouldn't use it. So if it is down at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock on this gauge, it's not charged. If it's a little bit overcharged, it's fine. But anything under, these are not the ones you're going to be using. Not yet. Okay? So again, there are different types. There's also a carbon dioxide type of extinguisher. And I just want to touch briefly on that. They are in some of the businesses still today, depending on what the business is. But what ends up happening is it's actually a gas inside. When you depress that, there's actually a really, you'll see a horn tonight when we use the ABC. It's very narrow in diameter. The ones that have carbon dioxide, it's a really large horn on it, and it's about this big. You really don't want to put your hand over the end of that, because when you depress it, you will get frostbite. So you really want to make sure that you're holding on to the handle itself when it depresses, and it makes a loud noise. So that's your CO2. That's why these are used, because they're very easy to use, and they do well at extinguishing fires. Okay. What else on here? Guess that's about it. So again, I've talked about water, dry chemical, CO2, and the dry powder. Where's the dry powder? Which one is that for? Good, metals. Your combustible metals, okay, your titanium, okay. And again, remember your different shapes and stuff. A is for a Class A fire, B is for Class B, and C is for Class C for electrical. Again, we talked about water. Again, we use air and water in there. It's really inexpensive to utilize, so that's why we like to use it, because it's not taking up. Some of these things can get a little expensive if you're using it every day. Okay. The next one is your multi-purpose, which we just talked about. It's effective for a range of 2 to 6 feet. One big thing tonight, when you're out there putting the fire out, no matter what, whether you're outside or you're inside. So let's talk about inside. If I had a fire in this room and I came in the door, you never want to go around the fire, okay, and get caught. You always want your back to be at the exit. So if you can put the fire out and it doesn't go out, then you can at least go out through the door, close the door behind you, wait for the fire department to arrive, and we'll take care of it. If you're outside, we have to contend with a couple of things. We have to contend with the atmosphere. So if it's windy, some things, the smoke may be coming at you. You may have to move to a different direction to be able to put the fire out. Once the fire is out, it's a metal pan. Some of these have auto ignitions on them. They will reignite. So never turn your back on the fire. So once the fire is been extinguished, you're backing out, watching the fire. Okay? All right, we talked about the CO2. That's getting a little bit closer. You don't see those a whole lot anymore. There are some on trucks and in some of the business. And again, at the bottom, it gets very cold, so make sure that you're holding it properly. You're not going to use that tonight. Real quick, so this is the APW. This is a water can right here. And again, it's silver, has the same type of gauge and stuff on it. It still has the pull pin, has a little bit longer hose to it. You can put your thumb over the end and make it into a little fog or, you know, a little pattern if you need to. But again, this is what we use a lot. And if you notice, you can all come up and look. Notice what it has crossed out on there. Class B and Class C fires. So would you want to use this on an electrical fire? Probably not. Okay? Yeah, I'm sure there's been a time in the fire service where we've had a couple of water fights utilizing these things, but none that I was any part of. So again, these are a couple of things I'm just going to reiterate. Again, number one, make sure you're notifying the occupants of the building. It's really important. You need to make sure that you're backing this up and calling 911. I always say you need to be an artist when you're calling 911. You need to paint the picture for us. So right now, Captain Wheatley's shift is on. He has a shift of probably 6 tonight. So if all of a sudden you call 911 and say, you know, I have a small fire or whatever, or, you know, I think I smell something, they're going to go out with just his shift. 1 engine or maybe 2 engines. But if you know there is a fire within the building, you see a large amount of smoke, that's where you paint the picture. And you tell us, tell the dispatch center or 911, we have a fire within the building. The reason for that is it goes from a still alarm, which is a single engine company for the most, to potentially a first alarm, which brings in our auto aid from Hanover and Hartford, which gets us more staffing, which helps us meet the NFPA of having at least 21 people on scene and that sort of thing. So please make sure that you're painting the picture for us. We don't mind going out on the fire trucks. Trust us. It's what we live for. We love coming to work. A lot of people go, oh, I gotta go to work today. We love coming to work. It's almost like not work. Okay? So again, pull the pull station, which I talked about. Disconnect equipment if it's safe to do so, which means your energized type of equipment. Remove combustibles only if it's safe to do so. So if you're able to get rid of combustibles outside, that's where we rather have them. We don't want them to stay inside. If you think you've extinguished the fire, you probably haven't. Okay, even though in your mind you've done a great job, but please make sure that somebody stays with it and monitors it. Because the moment that you go outside and somebody opens the door and feeds it some oxygen, it's going to reignite again, and now we have a fire. Okay, so make sure that you at least stay with it. And again, use fire extinguishers if trained and the fire is in the incipient stage and small. This here is what we call RACE. If there's people within, this is a lot of stuff that we use at the hospital. So we remove persons in the immediate danger. So if they're in a room, we get the person out of the room. bring them to a place of refuge. Sometimes it's a shelter-in-place type of thing where we go next door. We obviously have to alert others and emergency services. Contain the fire. So the bottom line is in some of these places that you go into, if you look, the doors in the hallways are open by magnets. The only way that those are going to close is one, if you manually pull them off of that magnet and close them, or if you pull that pull station, it actually de-energizes that magnet and they will close automatically. And the reason for those doors to close is because we don't want smoke or fire traveling to other parts of the building. Okay? And then evacuate or extinguish. I always tell people, great if you tried, but if you didn't put the fire out, it's okay. You tried to put it out. Some of these things can be very miserable to put out and extinguish. It's tough for us sometimes. Sometimes we have to use foam to really put it out completely. Sometimes we're going through multiple gallons of water to put it out. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes you probably won't extinguish it completely, but what you've done is you've contained it and you've kept it small so that when we get there, we can take care of the rest of it. If you notice, a lot of these places have sprinkler systems. Does everybody understand what a sprinkler system does? Who thinks that if one head goes off, they all go off? So we all get wet. That's not the case. The only one, if you were to look over here at this side mount sprinkler, if there was a fire right here, and it's going to reach up there, and it's got a little fusible link in the center of it, it melts it out, and it'll actually fall out, and now you have water flowing. But the sprinklers over there are not going to go off. Now, I'm not going to say to you that you're not going to have some water damage. These things flow 25 gallons a minute. If it takes us 8 minutes to get there, there's some water that needs to be cleaned up. We have water vacs for that. But we would rather put the fire out and deal with the water if we need to. Okay? All right. We talked about calling 911. Make sure the exits are clear. Make sure that you're picking the proper extinguisher, which we've gone over, and whether or not you've been trained. So let's talk about PASS. PASS is the acronym. I'm going to change it slightly. I'm going to call it PTAS. And what I mean by that is the first thing that you're going to do when you get this extinguisher, you're going to tap it to make sure that it's not caked. Okay? The first thing is pull the pin. So we're going to pull this pin out, you're going to put it into your pocket. Just don't throw it away. The next thing you're going to do is the T. The T's not up there, I know, but I want to add it. It's test it. Don't aim it towards the firefighters tonight, okay, and depress this. You don't know how many times when we're doing 40 to 45 people, they aim it at us, and then we start getting asthma. You know, we don't want to do that. But granted, it's not going to be the thing that kills you if you breathe it in, but what it will do is if you have asthma or things like that, it can actually bring those attacks on. So it's not something that you want to breathe. So if you do have that, you don't want to partake in this, I completely understand. You can watch it from inside or way back. But whatever it is, if it starts to come back for you, don't stand there and going, oh, I'm getting a lot of dry chem tonight. Just move around to the other side, okay? So we pull the pin, test it. Then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to start to walk up. You're going to aim it at the base of the fire. Now tonight it's in a container. If you aim it at the base of the fire, you're hitting the ground, you're not going to put the fire out. You have to get it up over the lip of the prop, okay? So, and we'll show you how to do that. Next thing you're going to do, you're going to depress the lever and you're going to sweep. This is not a sweep. This is a sweep, back and forth, using it back and forth as fast as you can go. Okay? Much easier when you have a hose. You can actually whip that back. So has anybody counted how many calls they've been on since you've been here? 4. Okay, so it's been, all right. And so make sure you sweep. Then what are we going to do once the fire is extinguished? Back out watching the fire. Okay? Questions? You ready to put some fire out? I want you to go ahead. Now, one of the things that wasn't on there is they got these little ties on it. See these little things here that keep the pin in. The best thing that you can do to get that done is just twist the pin and it'll snap that tie off very easily. Okay, so go ahead. You're going to go ahead and twist that pin. There you go, and you can see how easy it comes. Take the pin out. All right, put your phone away. No social media is important. No. Okay. Now, remember, do not push down on the top, hold it on the bottom. Hold this. Whatever's comfortable to you. We're going to walk up here. Don't aim it at him. When we get up there, you're going to just spray it off to the side a little bit. Good. And you're going to walk up, and you're going to spray at the base and sweep.
That was easy.
Okay. Don't turn your back.
Don't fall on the
Yeah,
ice.
and then don't slip. Next up. You can leave it going a little bit. Who's up next?
I'll go.
All right, just use the same one.
So the same one, okay.
Yeah, so just this pin has been pulled. Yeah. You're going to see how many fires we can get out of one of them.
Do I test it or?
There you go. Back out. Okay. Nice job. Next up. So, this is Captain Jim Wheatley. Jim, I guess I followed Jim over here to Lebanon. Jim was actually a firefighter in Hartford. He was actually my firefighter when I was a captain in Hartford. So we fought a lot of fire together. And obviously now he's a captain. So it's nice to see people that you've worked with transition into those leadership roles. So again, this, what you're looking at is anywhere, I think it was like a $12,000 mannequin.
That's what we got it for.
Yep, so it's a lot more expensive than that. Again, when I was talking with some of the people, this has the ability for us to do a number of things. One, we can do mega codes on it. So any individuals like in cardiac arrest, we can do all of the functions that we would do in a real live situation for a cardiac arrest on this mannequin. We can start IVs, as you see, that are hung here with fake blood. We can defibrillate, where we can actually shock this mannequin. We can do crikes and put a needle crike in there, or put a regular crike in if we need to. We can do what we call an IO, which is an interosseous. So we have what we call a bone drill. So sometimes we can't get IV access, so we actually drill into the bone, into the marrow. It's a thing called a trocar. We pull it out and we can aspirate it, and then we can put sometimes, when they're unresponsive, we don't put lidocaine. If they're obviously conscious, we would, because it can be a little painful. But then we can hook our IV fluid up to it. The bone marrow is where the cell starts, so we can go ahead and put all of our invasive drugs and things right through the IV line into the bone marrow and out to the body.
Can we put that?
You sure can.
Thank you.
As I indicated, This has the ability for somebody to put a headset on and talk. So if the rescuers are asking questions, I can answer them and my voice will come over this mannequin. It can be a little eerie. You can set it up and Jim will show you. It can cough, it can vomit. It doesn't projectile vomit, it makes sounds of vomiting.
His teeth come out?
Yeah, so it can change your pupils on it. It's like a Terminator, if you've seen the movie, for the most part. We can exchange limbs. We got limbs in the back that we can put on here. We can change different arms. There's an arm back there that has blood on it. As I indicated where we ordered this from, you can actually purchase different programs for this to run. So if we wanted to do an active shooter program, it will run through this and it'll actually do whatever your active shooter scenario that you want onto the mannequin. This is all about continuity of our firefighters and EMS personnel, where we want to make sure that we're training everybody to the same capability and running code. So we don't want A shift running a code different than B shift runs a code. Jim is our training officer, so he will push out target solutions to everybody. They have to do all of these practical evolutions, fill out paperwork, they have to sign it, and then they go back to him where he keeps track of all of this stuff. Did I miss anything?
No, here, keep buying me time.
Okay. So here, just kind of give you a little.
So we tried to set that up to mock exactly, actually, Isaac, would you go grab a monitor?
So these are what a lot of our drugs are kept in. If you can see these. This is pretty much empty right now. It's usually full. So there's drugs there for cardiac, for diabetes. There's things to slow the heart down, speed it up, stop it. We don't want to stop it usually. However, sometimes we do stop it. We have a drug called adenosine, where sometimes you have what we call a supraventricular tachycardia. Your heart's racing really fast. Has anybody ever been on a roller coaster before? Mm-hmm. So you know when you're going click, 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 and you're going up the roller coaster. How do you feel when you're getting ready to go down the other side? What happens? Your stomach, that's exactly what happens when we give adenosine. That's what, that flipping of the stomach, and actually the heart stops and then resets itself very quickly. Adenosine has a very short half-life, so it doesn't stay within the body very long, so it kind of dissipates, but it's really quick acting to hopefully reset the heart. So we can do that. We can give several doses of that. We carry aspirin, nitro, morphine, lots of different. We carry fentanyl, and now we carry ketamine, for pain. So we do have narcotics on the ambulance.
Do you have AEDs on these?
We do. There's one right here. So this right here is a big AED. It's called the Life Pack 15. This does a lot more than the simple AED does. We can check carbon monoxide levels. We can obviously do rhythms. We can do 12 leads, everything. And we have, some people are old enough, not everybody. If you remember Emergency 51, where they did telemetry, this does telemetry. We can send the rhythm directly to the hospital, where the hospital can read it, and if they see what we call a STEMI, which is an ST elevation, myocardial infarction, what they can do is they can actually call the STEMI alert and get people for the cath lab to come in so that we bring them right up to the cath lab so they get a balloon or get roto-rootered out. That's what I guess we would call it. So, okay. So sometimes people have a problem with keeping things down. So we have a suction unit that we can suction any stomach contents and things like that, blood, debris, any of that stuff that would be in the airway. We have portable ones for that. Is everything working okay, or?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Is the camera on here?
Yeah, no, it's not that.
Yeah, can you show them? So the other thing that's pretty cool is there's been a lot of talk about intubation with placing endotracheal tubes in. When we place an endotracheal tube, it's really a patent airway, and this is what it looks like right here. So this actually goes down into the trachea. So it goes directly to the lungs. Getting that in there can be sometimes difficult, especially if there's any trauma, any type of fluid in the mouth that has to be suctioned, because what we're looking for is what we call the glottic opening. It's not very big, and we use this laryngoscope here, and it's got a little light on it, so this actually goes into the mouth. You're at the head, you go in like this and you pull up, and then you take this tube and you put it down through that little glottic opening, and that's how we would do that. Sometimes it's not easy, sometimes it is, right?
Absolutely.
So what Ian has, and he can explain this to you, is so this way, I want to, so we have a guy here, Phil Green, he can innovate anything. I mean, you know, he's like, and Phil only has one eye. Yeah, so you talk about somebody having the ability with, you know, having a limitation, but Phil is really,
He's been
really
a paramedic
good.
since 1988.
Yeah.
So he's got a couple of years on his.
Yeah.
So Phil actually came to us from Atlantic City, New Jersey, where he was a paramedic in what they call the Knife and Gun Club.
Yeah.
So he's seen a lot of traumatic injuries. There's nothing that phases Phil. His
Yeah.
favorite thing to do with new EMS providers is let them walk right to the edge before they make a mistake or when they're uncomfortable, and then he's there to rescue them and teach them how to do it the right way. And so he's a great resource for us
Yeah.
to have here.
Yeah, so he can really do well at intubation. And what Ian's holding, and I'll let you explain it if you want, Ian.
So this is a digital intubation. So this is a fiber optic camera, actually. This is actually an older version of what the newer ones. I mean, today's world, it's unbelievable what they have out now. We had this one 5 years, Cap? Probably 5, 6 years, probably.
Yeah.
So with this one, I'll turn it on, you guys can see. That's actually, well, obviously we're looking at Jim, Captain Wheatley and Isaac. So we put the tube in here. A little bit lubricant. And
Don't do that again.
by doing this, it allows us to open the airway and we watch the camera, not where the laryngoscope here, where we watch the camera and you can see exactly what's going on as you feed the tube down through.
So what the big deal of this is that sometimes you have an esophageal intubation where it goes into the esophagus. This has allowed us to be a much higher percentage of going into the trachea than it is using the laryngoscope and things like that.
And that's an older model compared to what some of the newer ones. The newer ones are unbelievable.
How much are those?
Those right there?
No,
No, the blade is. It's
Yeah.
detachable, so you
Those
throw the
are
blade out
about
and get a new blade.
$1,500.
But yeah,
So-
no.
Camera you can use over
Yeah,
there.
yeah, absolutely.
and just keep in mind, what you see here for baggage, it's times 3, because we have 3 ambulances. So you can't say, all right, we'll put this one on the primary truck, because if it goes, the primary truck goes out on a basic call and the secondary truck is there and you get a cardiac arrest, that's what you need. So you need to have 3 of each and then backups too, because sometimes they break. So this machine right here, when we talked about grants, this is the Timken Aerospace gave us a grant for about $100,000. And we were able to purchase 3 of these LifePak 15s through the grant. Now we do a lot of stuff with them. We do all their fire extinguisher training. We do a lot of CPR stuff for them. We do a lot of touch-a-trucks and things like that. So it was really good that we're, you know, it's kind of, we scratch your back, we get something in return type of deal. So again, $100,000 is a big chunk off the budget for us unless, if we had to put this in. And these are coming due soon, and, we're going to be doing hopefully the same thing to try to reach out and get some grant money and stuff like that to get these replaced. All set?
So we'll get started when we get there.
All right, good.
So, as he said, we try and run through all kinds of different scenarios that we would encounter in the field. So what we're going to start with tonight, is there anybody that's involved in healthcare that would like to come and participate? No? Okay.
Anybody know CPR? All right, well, come on up. You could. You're right back there. That way I won't have to do compressions. That's all right. We'll get you through it.
So how we're going to start out is we're going to start out with a very common occurrence where we get dispatched to a chest pain, a person that's having chest pain, okay? And you're going to see them come in and hook up all this fancy equipment. I'm just going to stand over here and push buttons, and they're going to get to do all the work. But they're going to evaluate the patient with chest pain, and you're going to see how it kind of evolves for the worse for this patient, from just chest pain to not such a good situation, or a much worse situation. And then we will bring the patient back to life because we have control over all of that. So we're very fortunate to have it. But so how the typical scenario would go is,
and while he's working on this too, I just, again, for me, it's a proud moment. I'm very proud of what these guys do. We bring back a lot of people from cardiac arrest because we have very, very good management of doing these things. And it's because of this thing here, because of training, because of good people, all of those things. But several times, and I'll just tell you this one quick story. We brought a guy back that was in cardiac arrest that went off the road in a car over next to FW Webb. And the thing is they brought him back. He went and got catheterized and all those good things. And when he came in to thank us, he brought us a bunch of cookies. Yeah. So it's like, thank you very much. Here's a bunch of cookies for you, instead of fruit or something like that. But anyway, so great guy. But we really love having those people be able to come back and thank us, and we love being able to see them. So, we take a great value in that. All right.
so I would give the scenario, firefighter Dewey, firefighter Cleveland will be the first arriving crew on the ambulance at their dispatch. Typically, it's a chest pain call, so we have a call prioritizing in New Hampshire. It's Alpha, Bravo, Delta, Charlie, and Echo. So Alpha level is the least severe call. It comes to the 911 center in either Concord or Laconia. Bravo is next, Charlie is next, Delta, and Echo is the most severe. Echo is usually not breathing, CPR in progress, cardiac arrest, or anything like that. Our policy in Lebanon says that anything that's a Charlie level or higher, we're going to send at least one paramedic on the ambulance. Anything that's a Delta or Echo, we're going to send at least one paramedic ambulance and the next closest unit with it as well. An Echo level call gets the entire on-duty. So during the daytime with the administrative people here, we might be able to put 8 or 9 people to care for that patient as long as we don't have other calls going on. Tonight, we may have 2 ambulance calls going, and E and I may be the only ones here, and we may be doing CPR on a patient by ourselves until we are able to get other help there. So this would get dispatched as a Charlie level call, and yeah, you guys go ahead. You're all set here.
Okay.
So they're dispatched for a male with chest pain.
Does it come up on this?
No, because the Wi-Fi is not working up here.
Sir, what seems to be going on? What seems to be the problem tonight?
So he was out shoveling his driveway, just shoveling some snow, chopping away at some ice. He got some excruciating pain between his shoulder blades, and it's a little bit difficult to breathe.
Okay. So you're shoveling snow. Have you ever had a heart attack before in the past?
Never had a heart attack. I went to the doctor. They told me I had some plaque in there, and they gave me these little white pills I'm supposed to take. I don't even know where they are.
Okay. Do you take
These are
aspirin?
the answers that we get.
Do you take aspirin on a daily basis?
Yeah, when my back hurts.
Okay. Have you had chest pain in the past? Have you ever had a heart attack in the past?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. So, allergies to any medications?
Sulfa drugs.
Okay. Are you on any medicines?
Yeah, I take something, some Perol thing, I don't know, for high blood pressure. take something for cholesterol, and the doctor said I should do a better job with my diet because I'm borderline diabetic.
Okay, so, sir, Isaac's gonna do a 12 lead on you real quick. Or actually, I'll do a 12 lead. Isaac's gonna start an IV on you. We're gonna do 12 lead.
So right now they've got the 4 leads on, as you can see, or maybe not. See if Ian will just step over here for just a second while he's doing that. They've got the 4 basic cardiac leads, and this gives us 4 different views of the heart, okay? And what they're gonna do now is we're gonna do what you guys would normally know as an EKG in the hospital. So we're gonna get 12 different angles, 12 different views of the heart. So we can see if there's any certain portion of it that's affected or not.
And Isaac on the other side is putting a tourniquet on, and he's gonna start an IV. And the IV is for a couple of things. Well, the biggest thing is we can give, obviously, fluid through it. We don't do whole blood here or anything like that, but what we can do is we can push most of our drug therapy through there, and if we can't get the IV, then we go to the interosseous, as I've explained to you.
And so this would typically have 2 to 4 people on it, maybe 3 people on it, like I said initially when they arrive. We're very fortunate that one of our duty crew just got back, so they can come up and help us, but.
Can we call him?
Sure.
Who's on there? Kaylee?
Kaylee and Dan. So just so you know, what I'm looking at here is I have a simulation screen.
Kaylee and Dan.
We're struggling with the Wi-Fi
Kaylee and
upstairs
Dan.
right now, but normally we can put this all on the big screen so they can see what's going on. You guys will be able to see it better. But this patient right now has a blood pressure of 150/80. His respiratory rate, how fast he's breathing, is 20 per minute. His heart rate is 75, and his O2 saturation is 97%. Yeah, he's pretty stable, right?
Yeah.
Right now. So he's having 8/10 pain in his back. So one of the keys that I gave them was the doctor said he's borderline diabetic. So if anybody is diabetic in here or knows about diabetes, one of the things that we struggle with that is their sense of pain is very different than other people because of neuropathy, if they've had diabetes for a length of time. So they don't feel pain in the same manner that all of us may that don't have that issue.
Got a call for you. So this is the second ambulance just showing up,
So what do you?
alright?
I just did 12 lead.
So this is firefighter Huff, and you met, that's firefighter Cleveland, firefighter Dewey, you met Captain Wheatley, and firefighter Eastman will be coming in here shortly.
So what they've determined by doing their 12 lead here,
Yeah, you did.
Dewey, if you could just step to the side there
Yeah.
for a little. What they've determined by doing this 12 lead is that this patient has what we call an inferior MI. So they are actively having a heart attack as we speak right now. And they're having it on the right side of their heart, which is very dangerous because their blood pressure can bottom out very quickly. One of the medicines that we typically give people with chest pain that are having a heart attack is nitroglycerin. We can't do that with this patient because that lowers your blood pressure even more, okay? So now Isaac has a line established, and this would allow us now to maybe give some nitroglycerin, but we have to give it very cautiously. And the only reason we can do that is because we now have an access that we can give fluid to control that blood pressure with. So,
And you can't give nitro because of where the heart attack is
because of
happening?
where the heart is, where the damage is and where the event's occurring in the heart. Yep. So,
Can you give something like TPA, or is that only at the hospital?
so we don't carry TPA, that's only at the hospital. Great question, absolutely. So typically now, what we'd be doing with this patient is we would give them some aspirin, and we would be moving them to the cot, getting ready to put them in the ambulance, okay? And Ian, this is your call. So now we notice this change on the rhythm and the patient is going unresponsive, okay?
Okay, checking for pulse and
Check patient. If
checking
no
for
pulse,
You got a pulse?
push,
No. Okay,
analyze.
start CPR.
Okay,
So we'll let her come over and do some
Compressions.
CPR.
Connect electrodes.
we'll get you over here, we're gonna start compressions.
Connect
We do high performance
electrodes.
compressions, so just keep going.
Stand
Faster.
by the monitor.
So now typically what will happen that we've got all kinds of help, and I know it's tough to see, but Ian's gonna kind of stand back and just take charge of everything here, and everybody's got a job that they're gonna do,
Push,
okay?
analyze.
We got an IV established, why don't you start, go ahead with an IO? get a quick IL.
So this patient is what we call in VFib now. For any of you that were in a public place and you were to grab a defibrillator off the wall and put it on this patient, it would tell you to shock the patient with this
Continue
particular rhythm.
CPR. Chief, you wanna draw up some medications?
Yeah.
We're gonna go with,
This is the
everybody clear? Yep, stop CPR. Everyone clear? Back on the chest. Keep going. Go ahead. Start CPR again.
So we just delivered 200 joules of electricity to this patient to try and reset the heart, right? We actually would stop it and hope it starts again in the correct rhythm.
1 to 10,000, please.
So now we're calling for the first line medication, which is epinephrine.
Continue CPR. You're doing great CPR.
And we have what we call pit crew CPR.
She's putting an IO in, the interosseous into the bone marrow.
Nice job. Okay. Skippy got me into this.
So every 2 minutes, what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch
Epizen.
CPR so that we keep that person fresh.
Okay. Danny, would you mark epinephrine, please? Sure.
3, 2, 1, ventilate. Ventilate.
All right, tired yet?
Yes.
All right. So, you can go ahead and stop.
Thank you.
Yeah, Danny, you wanna
Just
work
so you
on
know,
that?
it wasn't even too much. We have transport.
Okay, number 2, get the IV you want.
3, 2, 1, ventilate. Ventilate.
Chief, would you draw up 300 of amnio?
So we're now mentally we're following an algorithm. So we've delivered electricity, we're ventilating the patient, we've given our first round of epinephrine, which is our first line cardiac drug for this particular rhythm that we're in.
3,
Now we're
2,
gonna work on an advanced airway.
ventilate.
In another 2 minutes,
Ventilate.
we're gonna deliver another shock, we're gonna check a rhythm, and then there's actually a different med, there's an antiarrhythmic that we go with.
Amiodarone's in.
Okay, so we just gave 300 milligrams of amiodarone, and we would code mark that on here as well. So this machine, when I say code mark, it allows us to track the times that we give all of the medicines.
3, 2, 1, ventilate.
Continue CPR.
Ventilate.
Blood sugar, real quick, blood sugar.
Okay, so your blood sugar comes back at 110.
Yeah, that's normal. Continue CPR. Chief's got the amnio.
And so the good thing about this is as well is Ian's kind of sitting back and he's sort of telling everybody what to do. He's the boss, but everybody's mind and everybody's opinion counts.
Ventilate.
Ian may not remember everything, I may not remember everything, but everybody here is gonna remember everything at some point. So it's okay to say,
If you want to get another epinephrine ready to go, not give it yet, but just get it ready.
and literally this
This
is,
is what the epi looks like.
this is how calm these calls go with us. And part of it is just because we're professionals, but part of it is just because we do so many of them that
Ventilate.
we realize that staying calm and communicating with each other is much more effective.
And that's what it looks like when you get ready to give it, and we would give.
So now Kaylee is ventilating the patient, Isaac's doing CPR, we've had a round of epinephrine, we had 300 of amiodarone, so our next drug at this point would be another round of epinephrine.
Keep going, I'm just gonna listen.
3, 2, 1, ventilate.
I marked the intubation, and I've also, Chief, we going to another epi? Yep, go ahead, Chief. Continue CPR.
Tube's good.
Tube's good. Good. Confirm with a stethoscope listening. We're gonna hit up end title, Dan, please.
Epi's in.
3,
Okay.
2,
No, but we
1,
have end title.
ventilate.
So when they talk about end tidal, we're measuring the expiratory carbon dioxide. There's a certain number we like to keep that in.
Check for a pulse while
If
you're
that
right there.
number reaches a certain amount, we know that we're getting circulation back, okay?
Okay, continue CPR. Isaac, do you need a break?
3,
Yep.
2, 1,
So you
ventilate.
notice this rhythm changed on here, right? This looks like a very organized, slow, but a very organized rhythm. So they checked for a pulse. They don't have a pulse, and what that means is that we have pulseless electrical activity. So we have electrical activity in the heart, but no mechanical. The heart is still not pumping.
Isaac, let's go
Okay.
with 500 cc
3,
full bolus.
2, 1, ventilate. Ventilate.
Consider maybe 5 Ts and
So the chief's talking about the 5 H's and 5 T's, okay? So those are things that might cause PEA or asystole.
Full bolus. What's the next drug
3,
you're gonna
2,
need?
1,
What's the next
ventilate.
drug you're gonna need? We've just given
Ventilate.
Now we're gonna rhythm change. We're gonna continue with epi.
Do one round of epi, amnio, 300 amnio.
We've done 300 amnio, we've done epi, we've got 2 epis in.
Want shock to start?
Shock one, VFib, PDA.
Yeah. Continuing.
3, 2, 1, ventilate.
You have a barrier in mind.
You all
Ventilate.
set, Kaylee?
I'm good.
Told you she was tough.
Yeah.
We've got a little bit of a, yeah, you wanna check for a pulse, we've got a little bit of
Do you
increase
wanna,
in
do you
the,
wanna wait till the 2 minute?
just check for a carotid, oh, yeah.
Yeah, we'll wait for the 2, and then we'll do another.
Yep, sounds good, Dan.
3, 2, 1, ventilate.
Also, the way the chief's doing
Ventilate.
CPR, you can check to see how quality our CPR is doing. So, Chief, can you feel?
Typically, somebody is now with a family member, we try and break somebody off to explain to them what's going on. We try to isolate them from the situation, but explain to them what's going on, what we're going to do. One of the tough things for people to
3,
understand
2,
that
1,
they don't always
ventilate.
know ahead of time is that
Ventilate.
because we provide all this advanced level of care in the field, the hospital, if we are not successful in getting circulation back, the hospital does not want us to transport the patient to the hospital. Because they aren't gonna provide any further level of care than we've provided in the field.
There you go.
So that's kind of tough for us, because we need to slowly break the patient's family into, okay, we're gonna do this for 20 minutes here, and if nothing changes, then we're gonna terminate this, and
Really?
yes, yeah. It's actually in our protocols.
You have to tell the family.
We have to tell the news to the family that so-and-so is deceased, and,
You all have to
Deal.
declare.
yes, yep.
Yeah, go ahead, do another update.
Okay, so you have a return of pulse now.
Hold up on
So
that.
2 minute mark, check.
Yep, we've got a pulse.
Got a
We're
pulse.
gonna get a blood pressure.
Okay, so you have a blood pressure of,
The pulse rate match the monitor.
49.
yes, you have a blood pressure of 58 over 30 right now.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna go with 250 fluid bolus.
I already gave the 500.
All right, let's go with another 500.
Okay, that doesn't affect it at all. Heart rate's still in the 40s.
Alright, so
Okay.
Consider
Do
with
some
five
pacing,
C's
dude.
Tablets.
No, I'm actually thinking,
do some pacing, dude.
Yeah, we can do pacing.
So now what they're gonna do is, so we started with the chest pain, right?
Pressor.
We went into cardiac arrest because there was enough hypoxia that caused the heart to go into cardiac arrest. So now what we're gonna do is we've got a heart rate back in this patient, we've got a blood pressure, but any methods that we're trying to raise the blood pressure are not working. So we're actually going to put electrical current through this patient's chest into their heart, and we're going to have this machine do the work for the patient. So we're gonna pace them. So we set it at a cardiac rate, we set a certain rate and a certain milliamps, and we actually will get a pulse back, and we'll actually raise the blood pressure and the heart rate of the patient by doing this manually.
There it goes, hang on. Oh, it did? Did
Here we
it
go. We got it done.
Sometimes we have to troubleshoot too, you know.
Alright.
One big thing that I will just say
Okay.
is there's a difference between what we do in the field and what they do at the ED. It's great lighting at the emergency room. We're doing this in low light, sometimes on the side of the road, dark like this, it's cold, you know, so we're doing all of these things with limited visibility, sometimes limited resources, space. We might have to drag them out of the bathroom into a larger area, all of that stuff. Plus, we're contending with the family members that are obviously very emotional and that sort of thing. So there's a lot going on around this. And then you put into this, you know, it's one thing to have somebody that's, you know, an elderly population, but take a pediatric or an infant, that this is involved, totally, you know, totally different.
So now what you're seeing, I know it's hard to see back here, but there's a little thin line right here next to each one of these complexes, and that's what we call electrical capture. That means that we are providing a heartbeat for every complex that's there. So we have to have electrical and we have to have mechanical. So the next thing you heard them talking about is they're feeling for a pulse that corresponds with this as well. Once we have both of those, we are now manually running this patient's heart for them. So they had a little bit of work, but we are speeding it up so that we increase perfusion, we increase oxygenation. Kaylee's providing the oxygenation for the patient, we're oxygenating the blood, and we're circulating that blood a lot faster in the body. Some of the other things, we would definitely be on our way to the hospital at this point. We're very fortunate within the city limits that Dartmouth-Hitchcock is no more than 10, 15 minutes away at the very most. But as you know, we respond to Grantham, Enfield, Plainfield. 20 minutes with 2 people in the back of an ambulance, 30 minutes doing CPR is a lot. But there are medications that we can hang through an IV drip as well for pressors. We'll actually clamp the circulatory system down so that we can raise the blood pressure. There are medicines that we can give to increase the heart rate as well in this typical patient. The other thing that we are starting to sort of experiment with in the field, and it's coming in our protocols very soon, is post-resuscitation hypothermic treatment. So we actually are going to make their body cold. And this has had great outcomes at the hospital, so much so that they're actually doing it in the field successfully, and we're going to do it as well. So as soon as we have a return of circulation to this patient, we're going to be packing them with ice packs to keep their body cool.
You know,
And then
as
we
a
also-
person, you know, whether to call or not, you don't wanna call for something small, but a friend of mine was at work, she was having trouble breathing, she decided to drive herself, and she coded blue in the parking lot at the hospital and passed. So, you know, I know we've called on my husband before, cause he fell in the bathroom, and it was me, I didn't know what to do, what was wrong.
We would rather have you call for any time you have a question.
It's hard to know
than-
whether to sometime, but.
And so
Yeah.
it is, because some of it is pride, right? You're like, we're fine, we don't have to worry about this. We're all just like that. We're no different than that when we're not here, but when we're here, we'd rather come and pick you up off the floor and say, have a good night and go home. We do 370 of those lift assists a year on an average, so.
We pick our own leg up and bring us up to the hospital.
Worse.
So this,
And I know who's on shift, so sometimes.
this is just a very small portion of what we do. You know, we do we probably do 60 or so cardiac arrests a year. So if you do the math, that's more than we should have to do, but that's what we do. Our outcomes, our last ROSC, return of spontaneous circulation, rate out of hospital in this particular area is about 39 to 41%. So just under half of the patients that we respond to in cardiac arrest, we are actually getting a heartbeat back when we get to the hospital. We don't want that to be a false sense of hope, because lots of times those patients still pass away at the hospital after they get there. But that is a much better outcome than we've previously experienced prior to this.
And we do have vents on the ambulance as well, so we have ventilators on there.
Yep,
that we
we have
can
mechanical
hook up
ventilators.
to.
So what do you attribute that improvement to? Is it just better training, is better improvement?
Well, there's a lot of things. One of the huge things that the science is actually proving and the data is proving is that early access CPR, so you folks getting to these people early and starting CPR, starting that circulation early is significant. Chief Libby teaches CPR all over the community. There's actually a new program that we're actually looking at out there now that anybody that's trained with CPR in the city of Lebanon can download this app. And through data and through GPS, it will track it. It will actually tell you if you're within a mile of a cardiac arrest or within 100 yards of a cardiac arrest, it will send an alert to your phone so that you can go there and start CPR, so that you may get there before us. And that's a free app. We're actually looking at experimenting with that as well. The other piece of that is our training and our technology has come a long, long ways. So Dan just finished, I'm a paramedic, Dewey's a paramedic. We've been paramedics for 15 or 16 years now. Chief Libby's been one for that long. Kaylee just took her entrance exam today, and she's gonna be starting paramedic school in June. Dan is on the other end of it, but the paramedics spend about between classroom time and clinical time in the hospital and ride time here. It's about 1,500 hours.
1,200 class hours and then 800 some odd of clinical time.
And so that's all, so they literally go to class once a week, and then 3 or 4 days a week they're in a hospital and some unit in the hospital, or they're doing ride time in a busy EMS service. So just our scope of practice has expanded
And I
dramatically.
will just say, one of the things that we try to do is if they're on duty, we try to let them go to some of this training.
Yeah.
But they're doing more so off duty going to get this training. So if they're not working, they're at a hospital or they're doing ride time or doing all of this stuff on their own, or here, yeah.
And Isaac next year will be applying to go to paramedic school as well. We're very lucky, currently we have 18 paramedics on staff. Kaylee will be the 19th paramedic. We have like 3 EMT basics, and the other 6 or 7 are advanced EMTs, which an advanced EMT Although they don't have as many medications, they can run a cardiac arrest very, very efficiently as well until a paramedic gets there. And there's lots of things we can do with this. I can't say how proud I am that we have. This is the same mannequin that is in the sim lab at DHMC that the nurses and the doctors and all of that use. And like you said, we can do needle decompressions for pneumothoraxes. Heaven forbid anybody has a problem with their airway, but we can actually do surgical airways on this patient. That's within our scope as well. We aren't far from carrying whole blood on our ambulance as well for traumatic patients. Any questions I can answer about any of that?
The one thing that I would suggest as well that's out there for classes that all of you can take that are going around is there's one called Stop the Bleed. So those are where they talk about direct pressure and placing tourniquets and things like that. And then there are kits that people can have in their household and stuff. It's a really good one. And then, as Jim indicated, the whole CPR thing. If people are interested in CPR, you know, we'll try to get a group of people together and I'll come out and train folks and do that. So you get a certification on it. It's good for 2 years. So you know, highly recommend doing some of that stuff. And along with that, there's also a basic first aid class that people can take with the CPR and first aid. So you know, it's something that we can do as well.
Just one last thing I want to show you. I know it's getting late. We do this on adults, but we have little people that we take care of as well, right? And so Isaac's going to go get a special bag. We call it a Broslow bag, and it is all of this stuff, but it's color-coded and it's weight-based for children. So we can lay this bag out, and we put a tape up next to the child, and they fall within a certain color, and we grab that bag, and it has everything we need in it to take care of that child. So, you know, children they're more stressful, especially for those of us that have young children, but they're what we call low frequency, high risk, because we don't deal with them that much. So we try to be extra prepared for that stuff and make things easier so that 2 o'clock in the morning, we have cobwebs up here, we can actually quickly go. So that's what this is called. This is the Broslow bag. And so anytime we go to any sort of pediatric call, this is the kit that we bring with us. And these are the color codes. So if I measure the call with any yellow, I'm just going to grab this, and it's got all of the stuff. It has the medication dosages, the IV size, the ET tube if we have to intubate the kids or anything like that. It has everything right in that bag that I need.
So after the call, you have to clean all of this up and organize it?
Yeah, so we come back. The fortunate thing about this is it's all in one pouch. So we kind of do this, and we just use this pouch for the kid. But we have to come back and restock this particular pouch. When you let too many paramedics near one of those things, the ambulance looks like it's a mess in the back. And it takes a while to put a truck back in service, for sure. But we have all of our supplies in our EMS vault here, so we just come back and restock everything right here.
And we've just talked about medical today. I mean, obviously, we have some significant trauma within the city as well. So again, you have those individuals that are in the back of the ambulance, so you need to pay close attention to bloodborne pathogens, and you know, there's blood in the back of the ambulance all over, and being really cautious of that. And then the last thing I would say is that we really have to monitor our people, because as you know, there's still a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder on different things that people will come across in calls that they will go on. And you know, that's what we hope, that we can have our leadership looking at all of our staff, where if they exhibit any type of signs or things like that, we can hopefully reach out to them and get them some help that they need, so that we can keep them and have a long career in this, because you know, that can certainly take a toll on people. Questions?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say thank you guys very much.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. So thank you. I just want to say thank you very much for coming. The other thing is, thank you so much for your support every year to keep us going strong and doing the things that we're able to do for the community. So it's very much appreciated.